So I have agenda for today. This is actually pretty basic. We're going to talk about 1095Cs. So to get started, my name is Mary Kautzman. I'm the compliance manager at Greenshades. I've worked here about 2 years. And like I said, my previous experiences was with the IRS, and I worked for the Florida Department of Revenue. So you may or may not know, Greenshades does taxes, which is my wheelhouse. But I'm always just amazed at how many situations and questions and things that come up. My background tends to be more in the auditing, and so my thought was, in my previous life, I was always defending and making things work. And I've always felt that if you can take the time before the problems come up and file these correctly, it just makes things so much easier, because especially with the IRS, the audits come 2 years later, and even if you have good records, even having people that remember what happened, or the questions that they ask, is always so difficult. So of course, I think everybody likes to avoid them, but at Greenshades, we really make an effort to make it, that's the goal, is to make it foolproof so that you don't even have to worry about it. As I was saying before, Greenshades has 20 years of tax and compliance. They started out with just the tax filing and the computers mostly, and now they've added HR and payroll solutions, which is wonderful. I just love it, things that are integrated, so you don't have to have several different components and systems to worry about. However, we also do have different levels and integrations, so that we can be suitable for almost anybody. We do have cloud-based, which is wonderful, and we also have, and we're growing. That's my biggest thing. 3,800 mid-sized organizations. I think the company's actually growing the same way our organizations are. It's kind of like people who started small and had some really good success and just want to keep going. Legal disclaimer: this content is not formal legal advice. Always consult your local counsel as well as your organization's legal and accounting teams. We're just trying to give you an oversight on how to stay compliant. But we also partner with My HR Counsel, which is a great service. It's kind of for, it's great to keep, because it's like that in between where you can get advice and more specified legal advice, and without having that big legal fee. So I recommend it. If you have any questions, you can always contact them or us, and we can get you in touch and find out more about them. Okay, so I'm sure everyone who's in payroll knows about this Affordable Care Act. If you look at the whole history of it, it really hasn't changed a super lot since it's almost 10 years. It's 8 years old now, but it has been refined, and definitely has. It's one of those things that you'd think with time, with not a lot of changes, it wouldn't be difficult, but it is one of those things that as things are coming up, it stays simple but complicated at the same time. So the biggest things are that, applicable large employers that have 50 or more full-time employees have to file the returns and give these 1095s to their employees. The most important thing is that, like I said, the returns themselves aren't that complicated, but they provide all the information. And so you just want to make sure that you keep all the records straight. And as you'll see from this webinar, they come from different sources. So you have to be careful that you're entering the right things where. Always very, very important are the deadlines. So this is applying to the 2022 tax year. We had a brief discussion about this, because if you file on paper, you have to mail them in by February 28th. And this is to the IRS. You have to have them postmarked to the employees by March 2nd. And if you're e-filing, you've got a little bit more time. You've got till March 31st to get those into the IRS. Last date to file is August 1st. So even if you are running behind, you don't have a lot of time to get them. So it is important to try to keep them up to date. And once again, it just should be part of your year-end information, because it does help with the planning of the future years, because you do have to provide the health insurance. So this 4-step checklist is like, so once again, it's simple, but so many steps are in between. So I just want to go through each one of those individually. The biggest thing is to know if you are an applicable large employer, because 50 seems like a number, but sometimes you float around. And when you're looking at if you are a large employer, you always have to consider not just your full-time employees. They count full-time employees, but for this particular counting, you have to use full-time equivalents, which would be that all of your part-timers that you have going through the years, you have to use a calculation, and for everyone that equals a full-time, that those get added. So once again, even if you can reach that 50 number, even if you're floating above and below it, it's so easy to miss it. And then because the previous year's count, it will determine if you have to file in the future. It does become really, really important. Little mistakes can make a big impact. And especially point 2 is to make sure all employee hours have been tracked, including vacation, holiday time, medical leave, military deployment, jury duty, and other hours. So I know that was one big thing, is that a lot of people didn't count all of the hours that they were supposed to. So, even though you didn't have full-time employees working, they still were counted as full-time employees because they did have this other pay that worked. And also when you're reporting on the 1095s, this information is monthly. So you have to have the recalculations every single month. As you're getting ready to prepare those 1095Cs, you should make sure you have accurate Social Security numbers for all employees. And this obviously goes with your other tax filings. However, it is easy to slip through the cracks, and then all of a sudden you're getting errors and issues. Another really important thing with the 1095Cs is if you have a self-employed plan, which means you're reporting, because you have a self-employed plan, you also have to have either the Social Security number or the birth dates of any dependents that you're covering. So that is one that, may slip through the cracks. It should be with your insurance records, but, once again, sometimes people, like, their dependents will change who's got the coverage, and so they add it and didn't quite forget to put the information in, and now you've got to scramble at the last second. Not a fun way to do things. And then the last thing always is plan ahead on completing, distributing, and filing your forms. Know the deadline. And I know if you are like me, I can know the deadlines, and I'm still at the very last minute scrambling to get it done. I think that's the way it just most people are. I actually admire people who can have them done early and ready to go. Anyway, so Form 1095C, health coverage, you have to provide information that's used for the employee to determine if it provides information to them so that they can know if they're going to be eligible for healthcare premium subsidies through the marketplace exchange. So that information is provided to them, but the IRS actually uses it even more because they cross-reference with the filings that come from the healthcare exchange to find out if they were qualified. So once again, this is where the information is very important, because the information you put down here really can make a difference with how you deal with the penalties if an issue comes up. Time-wise, I switched the presentation around a little bit on this one because I wanted to just kind of go through the form itself just to show you. I kind of think about it, if you don't have technology, how would you be filling this out by hand? And I just couldn't even imagine. So obviously you've got part 1, which is the employee information, and then also the applicable large employer. So you've got your own information that you have to provide for them. The address is important because that will show that you had the correct information, which does become a factor because you do have to provide this to the employees. So obviously, if you've got the wrong information on the form, now you can't just send it out. You're going to have to find another address. So it just, once again, it's important to make sure you have the information before you get started. And then if you look at part 2, there's a couple of little things. They need the employee's age on January 1st, and that would apply if there's a health reimbursement plan. For other employees, it's not necessarily a required field. There's also the plan start month, and this 2-digit number just indicates to the IRS, because most employers provide, open enrollment over a certain period. So this is going to show the first month of the start date. I know a lot of companies that start, in July or later in the year. So depending on what month it covers, it kind of will show the IRS if this form is applying to this calendar year, or if half of it's going to go, back and forth when they're looking at the employee offers of coverage. So then you go to the part 2, which is the employee offer of coverage. Obviously, these are codes. The calculations are what makes Greenshades, I think, so fabulous about it, because instead of sitting here with looking at this and looking at the instructions, which is several pages with multiple choices, you have the opportunity to have the information available so that it makes it a little bit easier to fill out. So you have to have the first line 14 just shows what kind of coverage was offered. Was it offered to the employee and dependents, employee and spouse? There's different categories. Like I said, most healthcare plans, I know with Greenshades benefits, it will have the information readily available. Then the next thing is employee contribution limits. If you didn't provide a plan that was affordable and had the correct, minimum essential coverage, you have to provide that information, which is based on different factors like how much the employee was paid and safe. And then 16 is the line where you can put in, I always explain that line 16 is your chance to show if for some reason you had an employee that wasn't offered coverage or didn't meet the requirements. This gives you the chance to show why you shouldn't get a penalty. And that's where, if you've got the right codes entered, you can avoid getting an audit from the IRS before it even gets looked at, in a situation where, like, an employee did go to the healthcare exchange and signed up for that credit. So that can prevent some things. Of course, once again, being accurate is also important too, because if you have the wrong one in, you will definitely get contacted. But the zip code is just where they live, because that's what they use to determine the correct numbers for the plan affordability. The last page is for self-insured coverage, pretty much a form that you would have. Most people have brokers that they're working with, and that information they can provide. It's a comparable to the 1095B forms, or I guess the 1095Bs that are provided more by the insurance companies. So once again, just showing you the different levels of services and some of our features that we have with Greenshades. These are just really great. This is the one that I like the best. It is the Dynamics Payroll Inspector for ACA, and it literally looks like this screen. If you can't see it, just let us know. We can get you demos and show you, see how it works, because the information on here, you can use this throughout the year, so that, once again, if you're looking at not just this year, but next year with your planning and looking at the insurances you're going to provide, this is going to show you any little things, any of the ones that are in effect as of it's live. So if you need to make any adjustments, you can definitely do so and maybe prevent errors going forward. So it does provide information on your aggregate groups, which is important, because that is something that doesn't necessarily, because it's like it's many different aggregates. So if you've got 3 aggregates, you've got 3 separate sets of numbers that you have to combine for some places. This can do that for you if you have the information. It does store that dependent information, so you'll be able to check and see what's missing. And, if the best way to do it is to send that email reminder out early and often until you get it. And then it also integrates directly with the Dynamics GP HR and software. So definitely connected very well as far as being able to gather the information that's needed. For Greenshades, we have the online benefits module, and this one, it includes the Dynamics Payroll Inspector. So and then it adds on even more things. Once again, this provides the interface for completion of enrollment events. That's when you're going to see if somebody added a dependent during the year, which could change all your codes, like I said, because in 14A, on line 14 of the 1095C, you have to indicate if it was coverage for employee plus dependents, sorry about that, or also employee plus their spouses. So it updates everything when elections are made, and so you don't even have to pull a report to be able to put the information in. The online payroll ACA model, this has two features, but I think that it does so much more than this. It works with the payroll model to track the compliance, and it features the Dynamics Payroll Inspector with Greenshades Payroll, and just makes everything, two lines doesn't even explain how wonderful this one is and how many different things it does. I guess it kind of combines everything that we saw before, but I just think it's so easy to work on. Anyways, just wanted to continue on with the 1095 creation and distributing. If you use the Greenshades program, either way with Dynamics or the platform or benefits, it provides the information and we can get everything done rather quickly. It gives you a checklist like you see over here, and it will pull the information that you need, and you have to do some checks on it to make sure that everything is there. And this is one place where even if you have a really good system, if there is anything missing, you can see it here as well, and then you're able to go back and correct other parts of your payroll if you need to. That's another great thing with the integration with the ACA and the Greenshades payroll. That's one of the benefits I definitely think. But once you're done, you can choose to we have a great mailing service, so you don't even have to worry about it. It'll have the postage so that you can know that everything was sent out. That takes one step off of your mind. It's a very timely and busy process, especially because you want to keep the records so that if you have to show later that you mailed them on time, then you have it. Another great benefit is that with the Greenshades payroll, if they elect to have it delivered online, they'll have it straight on with their other HR documents. Otherwise, you can, there's other ways that you can get those done, but it's just so nice to have it all it's one of the buttons that's further down that you don't see on the screen. But then it's designed so that all of the information that you have not only goes onto the 1095C, but also you'll have the information for the 1094C. And once again, you'll just have to go through, verify a couple of things. As you're verifying, once again, you'll notice if anything is off, and you can always just correct it, which usually, it's pretty user-friendly, so you'll see there's lots of warnings of what you have to do, and then so you can make the corrections and then have it ready straight to go to the IRS. No additional, because it's all integrated, you don't have extra steps to worry about. So the next screen is for questions and answers, but I did want to add a little bit more before. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them into the chat and we can look at them. But since we do have time, I did want to also, we didn't include this in here, but once again, when we're talking about making the forms and having all of the information, the 1094C is the accompanying form. It's called the transmittal form. And in the past, with other information returns, like the 1099s and the W-2s, there was a transmittal that acted more like a fax. I said it's like a fax cover sheet that had a brief summary, but with the 1094C, it's actually has separate information on it that has to be reported to the IRS. So it's not just information from the 1095C, it's information mostly about the employer itself in a summary. But once again, this is one of those places where the definitions for certain things are not exactly the same on both forms. So I just wanted to point out a couple of little things that, could make a difference on here. So like on the 1094C, one of the questions is you have to indicate if 95% of your people were offered coverage, and it's a yes or no question. That other screen that we showed you before is the one that has that information. So you actually see it visually before you even start filling in the form. Makes it easy. Then there's also different counts on there. So you have to include the section 4980H full-time employee count for each employer, and that one does not count employees that are in the limited assessment period, which is sorry if I'm kind of going all over the place because that's the way that the four. I guess this is I guess what I'm trying to show you is that that's the code that's in line 16 of the 1095C. If we were doing this by paper, I mean, once again, just without any computers at all, you would have to like flip back and forth to see what code was there when you're doing the counts. Computers have made things a lot easier in that aspect. But, once again, that number is a little bit different than just the full-time employee count, which is column C, has a total employee count for all ALE, all of the large employer members. Now, this one actually includes all full-time and all part-time employees that are, and it's measured monthly. So, once again, the programs will be able to pull it out so that you have the number that's pulled on the same day of the month so that you can see where you are as far as your employee counts. That in itself is kind of beneficial, but I think that the biggest thing is that when you integrate it with the payroll, because you know how many checks went out that week, rather than just trying to remember or look at the timesheets. So that is gets all the information on that 1095-4C that has to go with the 1095C, and then you'll be ready to go. So do we have any questions from anyone?
Yeah, Mary, thank you for asking, and thank you guys for piling on the questions throughout the course of the presentation. The first one that I see here is, since the 1094C e-file is submitted to only the IRS, can the number 9 on the year-end checklist be removed? And the number 9 step says e-file state 1095C return.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's there are a few states that require the forms to be sent, but that is one that definitely can be omitted.
Okay, good. Thank you. Another question. Well, this will be the last one, just for the sake of everyone's time. I know your time is important to everybody. It asks, does your system actually calculate the line 14, 15, and 16 codes?
No, you do have to enter them according to the quality. It will calculate the amounts of the employee contribution, especially if you're using one of the safe harbors. That one definitely it will do. There's actually a component in there that will show you which, it kind of graphically shows you how close you are to those individually. So you can you can use that as a guideline too. Once again, for planning purposes, it's really great because you can kind of see which one you might want to use if you absolutely had to, or if you wanted to be able to use that as one of the code 16 numbers, so that it will show you, and then so it'll calculate the employee portion based on the information that you put in, and that's based on the payroll that you have and their amounts that they need for the wages, wages that are counted towards their contribution. And then for the code 16, that one usually there a lot of, well, I know that like if you do use a particular one, it goes across, so that one's pretty easy to do. There are like a few situations where you do have to pick out and manually put in, but the choices are available for you, so it's not that difficult to enter them when you're going through the wizards.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for walking us through the keys to keeping compliant with the 1095C and ACA webinar. Thank you to all of you for being here with us today. We just appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.